You're listening to the Farmyard Podcast. This podcast is supported by Farmyard and Farmyard's Mighty Network. Episode 63. How can soil and water be conserved? In this episode, I'm going to speak to someone who is going to tell us how to do just that. Well, hello everyone. Linda Borghi here from Farmyard. And you, my friends, are just one seed away. Well, boy, I'm kind of like in the middle now. I'm not up north and I'm not down south, and I'm looking out the window. And the colors of fall are so vibrant. I have to tell you, did you ever pick up a leaf, after it's fallen and just look at that landscape? It's like it's a different universe, right? So interesting, nature and all of her wonders. And today, I really want to talk about soil and water conservation. Now, I lived in a household when I was, I swear to God, knee-high to a grasshopper. My godfather, my Uncle Mike, God rest his soul, he taught us how to fold a pizza box into a 6-inch square. And God forbid you put anything in the wrong garbage pail. Now, I'm 63, so that was a long time ago. But he was onto it. He was the head of the Bergen County, New Jersey Health Department, and he knew how to spell compost. So if we fast forward to today, right? I don't even think we know how to pronounce compost. I don't think we have any type of a relationship with the earth beneath our feet or the water coming out of our faucet. So we damn well better have people in those positions that are very well informed. And that's who I have on the line today. I have Evan Folds, who is running for supervisor as a write-in candidate for the Soil and Water Conservancy, and I want to bring him right on so he can fill us in on his plans. Evan, I know you're there.
Hello, Linda. How are you?
Good, honey. So glad to hear what you're doing. I mean, I know that you started late in the game, but I want you to tell us exactly how it all came up to you that you were going to do this to begin with.
Yeah, well, it actually wasn't the first time that someone had asked me to take a look at it. And it's the technical office is the supervisor for the Soil and Water Conservation District. It's strange English and it's a mouthful, but that's technically what the position is. And the previous time that I'd been asked to take a look, the timing wasn't right. And this time, a friend of mine who was going to run decided he was going to move out of town. I think he was going for a job and couldn't make the commitment and asked me to attend the board meeting. It was a couple of weeks ago now. I did and understood that there was currently one person on the ballot that occurs. The election is November 6th. Early voting is already underway for a couple of weeks now. And so there was one person running for two positions, two elected supervisors. And this has actually happened in the past. And the board was able to kind of endorse someone that showed up interested in the position. This time, two people showed up for the write-in opportunity, so they were able to endorse me. So it's a good thing. It's really caused me to kind of spread the word a little bit more than maybe I would have if it was just kind of a cookie cutter kind of situation. So that being said, it's safe to say that I wasn't completely aware of the scope and mandate of the Soil and Water Conservation District before I started to lean in. And the more that I do, the more excited I am about really being able to bring some energy and some new ideas to the position and really make a difference.
And how long has the current supervisor been in office?
It's a 4-year term. So you basically commit to 4 years. It's a monthly board meeting. There's 3 appointed supervisors, there's 2 elected supervisors, and there's a director that is a kind of a paid position. And they operate as sort of a board of directors.
Are they all paid positions, Evan?
No, they're not. I know the elected supervisor positions are not. I'm not sure about the appointed. But what's really interesting about this is that I know other than one board meeting, which was fairly brief in terms of the 3 hours that they allotted, I don't really know a whole lot about the position. I've done the research on their website. I've seen them around. I saw them at Paws in the Park, identifying animal waste as a big issue for water quality. So I've seen them, at schools. So I know a little bit about what they do, but I'm really that's really not my central concern. What I'm really interested to do is just kind of come in as if I don't know, and the reality of this is that if you look at the website, the mandate, the mission statement essentially is to protect and enhance water and soil quality, which to me is a playground. We've got more issues with our soil and water than you could ever imagine where we live, and in most places, frankly. And what this opportunity speaks to me as is a way in which to, garner resources to educate the public and children, and then at the same time connect, farmers and hopefully homeowners with grants that can help us enhance the quality of the soil and the water in our area. So, how that can manifest is really the sky's the limit. I'm sure there's limitations. I know there's a budget limitation currently, and I understand I live in New Hanover County. It's very small geographically. Basically, it's Wilmington, North Carolina. So it's very densely populated. So there's very little farms. Property value is beyond, what would make sense to farm on generally. So I think the lack of budget has to do with the lack of farm infrastructure in our county. So I'm very interested to kind of, why could we not designate residential landscapes as a farm, like with Farmyard? Imagine that. We could go in and actually connect people with grants to develop their residential landscapes in a farming capacity to improve the soil and water quality. So, if there are ideas like that I want to bring to the table and push them as far as they can go.
Well, why don't we tell our listeners exactly what type of a background you come from?
Yeah. Well, it's funny. I've kind of been training for this kind of position for a long time. I've had a 16 plus year career of working in agriculture in many different capacities. I had a retail garden center for 15 years in Wilmington, North Carolina called Progressive Gardens. I had a wholesale company for about a decade called Progressive Farms. I closed the retail store about 2 years ago and sold the wholesale company at the end of last year. And in that time period, ran a 13-acre market vegetable farm out in Castle Hayne in New Hanover County. Had a food lawn project that we developed that looked at the economics and value of space in terms of front yard farming, commercial wheatgrass business, organic lawn care company. So I really approached water and soil quality from many different directions, all the consistent piece being, this is a conservation position. I really take a kind of a different view of that term. It's one thing to conserve what we have, but what we need is to play catch up. So I really look at conservation as regeneration. And I think that's, one of the things that I want to make clear, if I'm fortunate enough to be elected from the get-go, is it's not really good enough to save what we have. We really need to make what we have better. So, that's a driving passion in my life. And, I didn't go looking for this position, but feel that I'm more than qualified to bring some expertise and some, like I said, new ideas and energy to the position.
Let's also tell the listeners some of the problems that your area are having, insofar as I know, number one, the water.
Yeah. Well, it's a long list. Water quality in New Hanover County. We were in Rolling Stone a couple months ago. The headline was, why is China treating North Carolina like a third world country? And the point of that was that the industrial agriculture that occurs primarily in southeastern North Carolina. There's more pigs than people in North Carolina, and most of it is positioned in the southeastern North Carolina region in the Cape Fear River Basin. So basically it all collects and comes to us in Wilmington at the end, and people are really getting fed up with that. Smithfield, who is owned by a Chinese company, which is where the headline from Rolling Stone came from, they currently are experiencing the first cracks kind of in the dam of the last generation of industrial agriculture, and that they haven't been forced to change their ways. And they're basically just collecting the hog waste, and animal waste in general is handled in this way, but hogs are an easy one to talk about in these lagoons, and they're open to the air. And the first lawsuit that they lost actually was a nuisance lawsuit. I think they've lost 3 lawsuits to this point, somewhere around $500 million. So they're starting to pay attention to the fact that the public is fed up. And there are very real and direct ways that these liabilities can be managed at the source with using select micro packages to do what's called bioremediation, and also the use of activated carbon, but very specific activated carbon called biochar that's up to 90% carbon. It can sequester the majority of the beneficial elements and the contaminants from this waste stream in very simple ways, cost-effective ways. So, the times, that's one of the issues that we're we're dealing with. We also deal with the coal ash problem, which made headline news from Duke Energy. It bleeds right into the river basin, flows. And then we have an issue called Gen X. It's kind of the headline. It's a polyfluorocarbon compound that essentially is the byproduct of Chemours, which is a spinoff of DuPont. Long story short, it's the Teflon companies that make the non-stick cookware. It's also used in other applications, but the chemical byproduct of that chemical process is leaching into the river from about 50 miles up the Cape Fear River. And it made headlines last year because they've lost lawsuits for a previous chemical that they've identified. They went to this new chemical, and now we're finding it in the environment. We're doing, hopefully we're playing catch up in regards to the type of research that we need to understand what it's doing to us, which kind of brings us to the whole point of how we get to a place where we're introducing these controversial materials into the environment before we actually know what they are and how they operate in a living system. So that's encapsulated in what's called the precautionary principle, which is a very popular way of approaching this type of situation in Europe. And it's something that we really need to get hip with over here. So safe to say, we're getting it from many different angles. And, we got a lot of work to do.
It sounds like it. And if anyone really wants to dive deep into water, please listen to our previous episode number 62, The Story of Water. That is an article that was written by Evan, published in Medium, and I did the voiceover. I seem to learn through my ears, so that's why I talk articles out, and I don't want to waste my breath. I figure there's a lot of people out there that are the same as me, so I figure it would be helpful. So Evan, the area that you live in is highly residential. What's up with the soil? I mean, is there a lot of Roundup being sprayed in the parks and the school grounds?
Yeah, that's pretty much the case everywhere. Another situation similar to as I described with the lawsuit situation. Monsanto just lost a lawsuit, and the judge upheld the lawsuit that's now moving to appeals. So there's a lot of this happening where the public is kind of standing up saying, look, there's some dots that we're connecting, and the research really hasn't been done, even though a lot of people believe that it has. So Roundup is that would be one of the things that I would be interested in understanding, the purview of the Soil and Water Conservation District over, how we're applying chemicals to school ball fields, to public parks, all of that, in my view, when you're talking about soil and water quality, leads right into the mandate that we've been discussing. So, as far as the soil quality, it's very poor. It's basically a beach, very low organic matter, say 1-2%. You need at least 4% to rely on the soil to be able to grow what's in it, vegetation-wise. So that gives you some kind of a framework. But, connecting that reality of the porosity of our soil, the way they measure contaminants in the municipality is the flow through in the estuaries. They measure the amount of water that comes through, and they estimate a percentage of that being contamination. And the goal is not necessarily to reduce the contamination measurably, even though that's one of the goals that they undertake. It's to actually reduce the flow of water. So if you could look at a residential, basically what you have now is contractors being asked to build homes in neighborhoods that have, no wherewithal in regards to increasing or even contemplating the organic matter percentage or soil quality for that matter. So, imagine you could go into a green builder situation and encourage points towards the ability of the soil to sequester more water in the landscape, and you increased the organic matter to 4% at a minimum, for example. So, there's things like this that we could talk about and think about and then, try to put into action. Because, the bottom line of any residential community landscape is that it's poor soil. You're basically starting from scratch, because when you develop a piece of property, you either bring in cheap fill that's been sanitized most of the time, microbially speaking, or you've removed the top foot or two of soil to level the land, which is where all the life is. And microbes don't jump over the fence. They don't kind of parachute in to make it right. You have to kind of bring that wherewithal with us in that respect. So, all that being said, on balance, and I would say everywhere from the residential landscape all the way to how they're currently managing industrial agricultural waste, the assumption is that the microbes that are required to do the work of remediating those situations, the assumption is that they're already there. And the reality is that they're not. So that's a point of disconnect versus the reality that I'd love to try to tie that knot.
Well, I can tell you that from my own personal experience, when I landed in Beaufort, South Carolina, and the property was nothing but fire ant drilling holes and sand. I'd never seen anything like it in my life. They call it the low country because I believe at one point in time it was all just underwater. But it was through Evan's consultation that within 8 months there was earthworms, and on 600 square feet, I had 500 zinnias planted, thriving. It looked like a flower shop. You know, it was very interesting, Evan, driving around the neighborhoods down there. Everybody has plants in pots.
Yeah.
And I said, what's up with this? Plants in pots, plants in pots. But then I realized because they didn't have any soil, really, and they didn't have the knowledge of growing soil, so they had to keep plants in pots. Well, you know, Evan, why don't you tell the listeners where they can reach you?
Yeah, thanks for that. My website is beagriculture.com, beagriculture.com. And that's, you can use the contact page or get in touch with me directly there. Also, a campaign on Facebook, which is kind of acting as a website for the campaign, limited in that, I'm kind of late to the game in terms of the dedicated website, but you can find a lot of information there and at beagriculture.com.
Well, my dear, I'm so happy that you took the time to do this.
Thank you for having the show.
I want to blast this out because, I am not a political kind of gal. But boy, if I lived down by you, I would be going door to door.
Well, one of the things about this that's been so cool is it's connected me to a lot of people that I haven't seen in a long time through my Progressive Gardens time and all that. And I literally have people showing up at my door. I made these little business cards to hand out that kind of talk about how to write in a candidate on a ballot. And so, they come by and are handing them out door to door at the polling stations. It's been really amazing to see people respond to some of the things I've been putting out there. So, I'll certainly do everything that I can to protect and enhance the soil and water in Wilmington. And even people out there that may know somebody in the area, I'd appreciate you spreading the word. It means a lot, and I could use your help. So thanks again, Linda, for letting me spread the word.
You're welcome, honey. I will talk to you soon.
Sounds good.
Well, I've hoped you enjoyed this episode of the Farmer Yard Podcast. If you did, share it with others. Subscribe, download, and leave us a comment on iTunes. That ups us in the rating. And also, go over to seed.farmyard.com and check out our mighty network.